Okay. If anybody has a question, you can now open your microphones and ask away.
Michelle, I think there were a couple of us that raised the question that we are uncomfortable with how similar this is. The idea that the death of one person can atone for somebody else's sin, that it's very parallel with the Christian thought. Do you think this is because these two things are basically happening at the same time? I mean, Gemara is being written when Christianity is basically becoming a thing. Or is there a real pure Jewish explanation to why the death of someone would atone for somebody else?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't have a good answer to that question. It needs further research into it. I don't know enough about it. Shadal's explanation takes it a little bit away from that, I think, because he kind of explains how the Kohen Gadol's job is to atone. Now, he still says, right, normally the general Kohanim who atone for sins do it with sacrifices. And here it's really almost like a human sacrifice, it is definitely a strange, it is a difficult explanation. And it could be why some of the commentaries, I would definitely feel comfortable suggesting some of the commentaries might have shied away from our Gemaras for that reason. And that it's possible that's why they ignored, because it is very strange that they ignored our Gemaras, right? It's one thing, what I did claim is that I think that they're relying on other sugiyot and the concepts that come out of other sugiyot, even though those concepts are not mentioned in the context of our sugya, right? It's not mentioned in terms of the Kohen Gadol's death having anything to do with the relatives, but it could be that they were trying to shy away from that idea so that people didn't say, this is a Christian concept. Why are we doing this in Judaism? And maybe that's why they shifted off of it. So it's a very good question, but I don't have a great answer. Other questions? It's quiet tonight.
We were thinking that.
Yeah, sorry.
We were thinking that maybe where it talked about the mothers of the Kohanim preparing food and sustenance, that maybe it was for the wives of the people sent to the Arei Miklat, because they wouldn't have anybody supporting them. Maybe I just had too much of ketubot in my head, but it's because it said lahin. And I know sometimes the nun and the mem, switch around, but in the Aramaic, but I don't know, is that? I
don't think anyone understands it that way. I don't believe so. I did see an explanation, which I didn't fully understand. So I looked at it when someone brought up something in Charuta. I went to look up some other commentaries on the Mishnah, and I saw something about why it was particularly the mothers, like why they didn't do it themselves. So I think if I read it correctly, it was saying, here, it's the Tosfot Yom, no, it's the Yachin, we saw him yet last week. He says, V'gam hu atzmo lo yefarneso, he won't do it himself. So he explains, why didn't the Kohanim do it themselves, right? Why do they need the mothers to do it? So they first say, he says, it's neged kvodo. It wouldn't be appropriate for the Kohen Gadol to start giving up food to people. And, it looks like, it would make it look like the Kohen Gadol is scared of the people. And that is not so appropriate. Or, shaloya ra'oi shetikubal tfilato, lekach ne'arag zeh. I have to think about what that means. It's not ra'oi shetikubal tfilato. Not sure what that means. But then it says, and with mothers, it could be that ahavatam kilkila shura. It's a great line. Because they love their sons so much that it just blinded them, like maybe it wasn't the most appropriate thing to do, but they just couldn't help themselves. We can all, I think, identify with that. And then it says, because women are rachel levav, they're more soft-hearted. And then also he says another point, which is if the Kohen Gadol really supported everybody, every poor person would go run there so that the Kohen Gadol would support it. I don't know if we'd actually get to that reality, but he addresses this issue of why the mothers and not, as opposed to, you're pointing out something different, which is why them and why not their wives. But I think they were really worried that it was the Kohanim it was the murderers who were going to pray They just want it out. And therefore they, they tried to do anything they could to prevent that. I don't think it's the wives of the men. But I assume also they were taken care of, I would think.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
So I'll just mention that the quiz has been sent here in the chat, and the answer sheet is also here in the chat. It won't be posted tonight. I'll update it tomorrow when I have the full lesson ready. I'll send the link when the full lesson is ready to the WhatsApp. Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us today.
Before you say good night, I just want to point out one thing, because this is a very complicated sugya, just so you know, in terms of nobody really understands what the death of the Kohen Gadol, and what they tried to do is an attempt to try to find, right, whether it's the sugya itself and then the Rishonim, who either, leave the sugya aside and come up with their own explanations because they didn't accept possibly the explanations of the sugya as based on your question before, maybe they didn't want it to sound Christian, maybe that's a possibility as to why they diverge. But what you see here is, and it's always interesting when you end up with a wide variety of opinions, and there's way more. I mean, it's actually interesting because Rabbanit Chana Dreyfus and her shir picked a whole bunch of different ones, and I chose to go with different interpretations than she picked. There's many, many different interpretations. And it just shows, if you walk out saying, wow, I really don't understand this, nobody understands this. It's a very difficult concept to understand. How could the death of the Kohen Gadol let all these people, what's the connection? That's why I love that one about the pardon. I thought it was so creative, because it leads to creativity to come up with why. And I think it makes for interesting sugiyot. Sometimes you walk out feeling a little frustrated, but it's interesting to see how things get interpreted when there's no clear-cut answer, and how creative people get in terms of trying to think about how does this make sense to us. And it leaves it open for interpretation, which always means there's always room to learn more about this. Thank you, everybody. I'm looking forward to next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was great.
Thank you so much.
Great.
And also
Thank
to the
you.
to my chevrutot, I want to say thank you as well.
Excellent.